So what are your utility bills running lately? $100, $300, $600, $1,000 a month? How well insulated and sealed your house is plays a huge role in how much you're paying every month. I don't know what your backyard looks like, but here in Athens, Alabama, this is what ours looks like. Subdivisions are going up everywhere. Cotton fields just being turned into houses. And all of the homes look a lot alike, all being built with monolithic, uninsulated concrete slabs, 2 before construction on the walls, R13 bats, OSB on the outside, house wrap and brick, and attic has R30 insulation and ductwork all in an uninsulated attic, unconditioned attic. Folks, are these builders working for the utility companies? No, it's a price deal. If they spend an extra $10,000 to really insulate and seal a house well, it's really hard for them to get their money out of that. It's far better for them to spend the money on a stone exterior wall or nicer columns on the front porch, nicer trim in the house. If they spend it on the insulation, you can't see that once the walls are enclosed. And people hardly ever even stick their heads up in the attic to see what's going on up there. But what's wrong with this picture? Hardly anybody insulates concrete slabs around here. Now, I insulated my house 2 years ago when we put in our house on a concrete slab, and I put radiant floor heating in the concrete. And I'm really glad I did. It is wonderful in the wintertime. But my builder was really concerned that this concrete was just going to crack and was not going to hold up. And I indicated they're building like this all the time up north. Of course, I've had no problem at all with the slab. But now you've got an opportunity to have all this thermal mass being a wonderful heat sink for you to retain and hold energy. And if you add passive solar to this with sun hitting it during the day in the wintertime, and then it releases it all during the night, helps to hold your temperature nice and constant in the home. Instead, now we have this as a heat sink, dissipating heat out from the edges where it's uninsulated and underneath. And concrete is a horrible insulator. It's like 0.1 per inch. And so you're losing all this heat out here, and the concrete floor is just so cold. And you're sitting there working at your computer and your feet are freezing because the floor is so cold. Then we get to the walls. 99.9% of all the houses in the United States are built with 2-bys. And it is estimated that 24% of the wall is wood. A quarter of the house of the wall is uninsulated with wood. And wood is like a 1.4 R value per inch. So you have all this thermal bridging going on in just a highway of heat going through the wall. Then you've got all these cavities that you've got to fill with fiberglass. And they're all different sizes under the windows. And then you've got receptacles and wires and plumbing and holes. And it's just hard to get your bats in there. They get compressed and you got air gaps and the R value drops. And it's virtually impossible to really well insulate a wall. Now, the insulation of fiberglass is an R3.5. When they do that test in the lab, that is with no humidity and no air movement. Folks, that's not reality. This is Alabama. We have really high humidity here. And that humidity is going to get in the walls. And the R value drops dramatically when it has humidity. And then you have this airflow coming in. And so you have a 20-mile-an-hour wind on a cold day. It is going to find all of the nooks and crannies and cracks in the wall and circulate air in that wall. And air can go through fiberglass. I mean, they make air filters out of the stuff. And you get convection currents. They've actually done tests and sensing the heat rising through the insulation. You have to have a very sensitive meter to pick it up. But heat is rising through the insulation and out the top. Then we've got the attic, R30 insulation blown in. This is even softer and air can go through that. And then you have the dumbest thing of all of your ductwork up in an unconditioned attic. And attics can get up to 140 degrees in the summertime, and you're trying to pump 55-degree air through your ductwork, and you wonder why it's coming out at 65 degrees on the other end. And then you've got condensation because the pipes are so cold with barely R5 insulation on the wrappers, and this heat, and you have all this moisture and water, and it's running down and staining around your vents on the sheetrock on the ceiling. And this is what it looks like, and that is a telltale sign that you have uninsulated ducts up there. Folks, what you need is the perimeter to be fully closed in with the insulation so you have a conditioned space up in the attic. And then over time you start getting pinholes, and tape comes loose, and you're letting air go up in this uninsulated attic. And then worse than that, it is pulling it from your heated space down below, and you end up with a vacuum on your house. Guess what happens when you have pressure differentials? It sucks air in through every nook and cranny in the house. Even receptacles in the interior walls, you've got open cavities all the way to the attic. And then the sheetrock's right up against the 2x. That's not an air seal. Air can get through that. And so it's sucking this 140-degree air right through the center of your house through the receptacles. And on a windy day, if you light a candle and you hold it next to your receptacles, you'll see the flame flicker. That's how much air is coming in through the wall. And then we've got brick veneer on the outside. This holds a tremendous amount of heat. If you've ever walked next to a wall, brick wall in the evening after a summer day, you think, whoa, that's a lot of heat coming off, radiating off of that wall. Yeah, and it's radiating it right through the insulation on the other side. And this is when you need a radiant foil barrier around your house so that it can radiate that heat back. It's like shade on your house. But and you've got that 1-inch air gap, and you've got to have an air gap with foil. If you got insulation or siding right up against foil, it does not work at all. You've got to have air. And on a driving rain day, you will be surprised how much water goes through that brick. Within minutes, you have water running down on the inside of that brick. This is why you need that air gap, so that it can dry out. And why you have weep holes all along the bottom to let the water out. Well, the masons get sloppy and they drop mortar down in that 1-inch gap, and it clogs up your weep holes. And then you have all this mortar that is right up against your house wrap, which gets saturated with water, then pushes the moisture right through the house wrap into the OSB, rots your OSB out, and then causes the fiberglass to get all wet. And you end up with a mess about a foot all the way around your house, uninsulated. In about 10 years, you got to repair all of this. It's a mess. So why am I telling you all this? Because we want to compare how we would build. You have no air leaks at all. That is half your battle right there. And then you have no thermal bridging going on because it's a solid mass of the insulation. So 2 really huge benefits. But another interesting benefit is the mass of the walls. I saw a white paper on a test lab that did testing on the R value of autoclaved aerated concrete blocks. These are Aircrete blocks versus adding foam into it. Now this is really popular in Europe, and they did their R value test and it came in at 1.07 per inch. That is low. I was really disappointed at that. But they went on to do some comparisons, load calculations of a 1,500 square foot house insulated with these AAC block versus stud wall construction with fiberglass insulation. And they had load calculations of Atlanta and Phoenix, Arizona, and Minneapolis and Washington, D.C. And what they found was the thermal mass of the block wall was doing better than a 2x6 framed wall with R19 bats in it. Is that not incredible? And so R value is not the whole picture. We've got to look at how well it's sealed and how well it holds and retains heat. So this is a huge benefit. So when I did a test, I was trying to figure out, okay, how can I come up with a test to do this? And so I figured, well, I know what styrofoam R value is. And I found a table in there that if it's 1 pound, it's 4.1. If it's 1.5, it's a little higher. And 2 pounds, it's clear up to 4.6 R value per inch. And I weighed this styrofoam, and it's about 1.2 pounds. So this is right at 4.2 R value. And then I got concrete over here, which is like 0.1 R value. This is like, so 1.2 pound per cubic foot. This is 110 pounds per cubic foot. And virtually has no insulation at all. So that's my 2 lines. And somebody recommended, why don't you put frozen bottles in each one of them and then leave it, say, 6-8 hours and come back and see how much ice is still left versus how much water is melted. Now, that's a great idea. So I did that, and it worked out really well. And of course, styrofoam did really well, had a lot of ice left and had hardly any ice left in this one. And I used that as my parameters and was able to calculate how well all these other products were doing. What it showed me was that Aircrete came in around an R2. And that's pretty close to what I was seeing with other tests. I don't know if you've ever Googled what is the R value of Aircrete. This is what you get. R6. I'm thinking, what? Google, what are you smoking? That is off by a factor of 3. So I went to the article saying, where are they getting this from? And the first picture was a picture of Aircrete with a K, spraying this foam into the walls. This is a very different product. This is magnesium oxide based. It has no Portland cement in it at all. Different products that they're comparing like they're all the same thing. And if you go to Aircrete with a K, they did have a test where they had modified their foaming gum that they were able to actually get an R6 value on the test. But when they had a lab do a test on their product, it came in at 3.9. And when you go to their website, that is what they say is the R value of their product, not even 6. I mean, 6 is incredibly high. There are very few products that get up to that insulation value. Now, I figure this is an honest mistake. You know, the guy that wrote this article just misunderstood the differences in these products. But I tried emailing him to try to get him to modify it, but I have not gotten any response. I just wanted clarified on Google because this is leading a lot of people astray as far as what the R value for Aircrete is running. And so then I've got styro concrete over here, and this actually came in just a little better insulation value than Aircrete. So that's another interesting mix. But then after contemplating the AAC test and as far as the thermal mass and how that was playing into it, I figured, well, you know, I was starting all of these at room temperature. And so then when you put your ice bottles within it, it's trying to hold the temperature at 70 degrees and releasing all this heat from the solid concrete with a Portland cement that was in the mix. So I decided, you know, I'm going to start all these at freezing temperatures. And my wife was really nice to clean out the freezer, and I was able to put all these boxes in there, and we started them all really cold. Got slightly different results. It was interesting. Within a half an hour, the temperatures dropped on the heavier ones down to like 10 degrees. But styrofoam dropped to 30 degrees. That was about as low as it would go. But then they rapidly started to ramp up over the next several hours and got up to about 58 degrees, where the styrofoam didn't get above 47 degrees. Thought that was pretty interesting. And when I tested the water, it actually hurt styrofoam. It dropped it to about 3.23, but it helped Aircrete, which is heavier, and it brought it up to around a 2.23 and brought this one up a little higher to 2.5. So that was interesting on these products. So hope that's helpful and lets you appreciate how good of an insulator this stuff is, and it's super cheap to build with this stuff.